When the papers were signed and the final stamp was pressed onto the document, I remember sitting in my car in the courthouse parking lot feeling like my entire life had just ended. My name is Laura, and after 20 years of marriage, I was suddenly divorced. The man I had built a home with, raised children with, and trusted with my whole heart had decided he wanted something different. I was 46, exhausted, and convinced my best years were behind me. Divorce wasn't just a word. It was a storm that had knocked the roof off my life, leaving me exposed and afraid. For months, I lived on autopilot. Wake up, go to work, come home, eat something simple, and collapse into bed. My children were grown and living their own lives out of state. My house was quiet, and the silence sometimes felt heavier than the heartbreak itself. Friends tried to reach out, but I kept my distance. I was ashamed, angry, and worst of all, hopeless. The woman I saw in the mirror each morning looked older than her years, worn down not just by time, but by disappointment. I thought I'd never smile again, not really. Not until one ordinary evening when I dragged the trash bin down to the curb. That's when I first had an actual conversation with Daniel, my neighbor's son. He was 28, just moved back home temporarily, while he saved up to buy a place of his own. I had seen him before, mowing his parents' lawn, jogging past my house, helping his mom carry groceries, but I'd never spoken more than a polite hello. That night, though, he smiled at me like I mattered, and for the first time in months, I felt seen. "Hey, Ms. Laura," he said. "Need a hand with that?" He motioned toward the heavy trash bin I was dragging. I laughed awkwardly, brushing a strand of hair behind my ear, and told him I could manage. But he insisted, pulling it down to the curb with ease. It wasn't a big moment, but it was the start of something I hadn't felt in a long time: connection. Over the next few weeks, I saw him more often. Sometimes we'd talk by the mailbox, sometimes while I watered my flowers. He'd ask how I was doing, and unlike most people, he actually listened. He told me about his job in graphic design, about his plans to buy a fixer-upper, and about how he loved helping his parents. One Saturday, I was struggling to fix a leaky faucet in my kitchen when he knocked on the door. "My mom said you might need a little help," he said with an easy grin. He rolled up his sleeves, got down on the floor, and within minutes had the faucet fixed. When I tried to pay him, he shook his head. "Nah, just neighbors helping neighbors," he said. What started as small interactions grew into something deeper. He'd bring over extra muffins when his mom baked, and we'd sit on the porch drinking coffee. He noticed the little things about me, like how I always hummed when I was nervous or how I loved the smell of rain. One evening, after I admitted how lonely I had been since the divorce, Daniel looked at me in a way that made me pause. He didn't pity me. He didn't judge me. Instead, he said, "You're stronger than you think. Don't let what happened convince you that life is done with you. It's not. You still have chapters left to write." That night, after he left, I sat in my quiet living room and cried. But for the first time, those tears weren't just from pain, they were from hope. He was right. Maybe my life wasn't over. Maybe I wasn't finished. In the months that followed, Daniel and I grew close, not in a way that was inappropriate or rushed, but in a way that reminded me of what friendship and kindness could do for a broken heart. He pushed me to join a community art class I had always wanted to try. He encouraged me to start walking in the mornings, and sometimes he'd jog by and slow down to walk with me, making me laugh about silly things. Slowly, I started to change. I found myself smiling more, caring about how I dressed, even cooking proper meals again. My confidence came back in small pieces, like puzzle parts one thought I had lost forever. One summer evening, we sat on my porch while the sky turned pink and gold. I told him, "You've reminded me that it's never too late. I thought my story was over, but you've shown me it's still being written." He looked at me with a warmth that I'll never forget and simply said, "It's never too late, Laura. Not for anyone." Life didn't magically become perfect after that, but it became brighter. I started traveling to visit my children more, volunteering at a local shelter, and saying yes to things I would have once avoided. Daniel eventually bought his fixer-upper a few towns over, but he still visited often, sometimes calling me just to check in. He taught me something priceless. Healing doesn't always come from where you expect it. Sometimes it comes from the kindness of someone who shows up when you least expect it, reminding you that even after loss, life has more to give. And for that, I'll always be grateful.